Gospel of Luke. As you know, it's my favorite gospel. I would dare say it is my favorite book of the Bible. And this portion of Luke's gospel that we enter into with chapter 14 and then spending time in chapter 15 in the next couple of weeks, I love these passages. Today we read from the 14th chapter of Luke's gospel, chapter 14, verses 7 through 14. Hear now the word of God for we, the people of God. Jesus went on to tell a story to the guests who had gathered around table with him. He told the story as he noticed how each one had tried to elbow into the place of honor. He said these words, "When someone invites you to dinner, don't take the place of honor. Somebody more important than you might have been invited by the host and you're in their seat. Then if that happens, the host will come and call out in front of everybody, you know, you are in the wrong place. The place of honor belongs to this person." Embarrassed, you will have to make your way to the very last table, to the only place left. Instead, when you are invited to dinner, go and sit at that last place. Then when the host comes, the host may very well say, "Friend, come on up front." That will give the dinner guests something to talk about. What I'm saying is, if you walk around all high and mighty, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to simply be yourself, you will become more than yourself. What a great line. If you are content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. Then Jesus turned to the host and said these words, "The next time you put on a dinner party, don't just invite your friends and family and all the rich neighbors, the kind of people who will return the favor. No, instead, the next time when you throw a dinner party, invite the people who never get invited out, the misfits from the wrong side of the tracks. You will be and experience a blessing because those people will never be able to return the favor. But the favor will be returned. It will be returned at the resurrection of God's people." This is the word of God for we, the people of God. Thanks be to God. When I pastored my congregation that I was appointed to in Newcastle, they had a great group, and they called themselves the Ladies Who Lunch. Like, I got to get to know these ladies. And what they were was, it was an amazing group, and these were all women who were widows. They were all widows, and I still remember them to this day, and it's been a while. Doris, and Gladys, and Jean, and Kate. So many of them, and they would gather, and every Sunday following church, they would go out to eat lunch. I longed for the days to get invited to those gatherings. I was like, oh, invite me, invite me. It was so good. And one of the real stellar people that you just enjoyed hanging out with was a woman named Norma. Norma was a character. Norma was one of the ones who automatically was drawn to, because the first time I ever met Norma, and we were talking about church stuff, she cussed fairly openly and frequently, and I'm like, I like this woman. We're gonna be buddies. Norma was delightful. Norma had also been widowed for probably about 15 years. And Norma and her buddy Gladys, also a member of the Ladies Who Lunch, they would go on those trips that seniors take, would go on these, pay in and take trips. They would go out west, they would go to Australia, England, and it was kind of neat. And one time on one of the trips they took to Australia, one of the people from the States who joined them on the trip was a man named Ed. Ed and Norma got together. Ed was an architect. Ed also was a total hoot. I had the honor to officiate the wedding of Ed and Norma. It was great. And Ed was a very talented architect. Ed was the type of guy who, after they got married, were moving into the same house. Ed literally designed little figurines of all their furniture and a little model of where everything should go for the movers. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, Ed, you do clergy moves? It was great. Ed was tremendous. And Ed, being an architect, we got to know each other, and I would hang out with Ed and Norma, and Ed would tell me good church architect stories. He says, I always loved when a church would bring me on if they were going to get a new building. And I said, so what would you do? And he says, well, I'll be honest with you, I would pad the first 5 pews of the church for folks because no one ever sat up front. I'm like, oh, that's good, Ed. And then he'd say, I loved taking the biggest conch shell I could find and making that be the baptismal font. And we would talk, and then he said, Sal, if you were going to design a new church sanctuary, what would you put front and center? And I was like, well, that's a good question. And at that time, I thought, I would kind of go what everyone's expecting. We're going to have a big cross up front. And I says, I would go off script a little bit. And I'd have the biggest round table I could think of up front. We serve a Christ who welcomed all to table. Why? It's so central to who we are. Our entire lives focus around times at table. Yes? As a kid, you go to elementary school, right? And you get snacks, and it's great. And you sit down in the lunchroom, and you love the lunch ladies, that type of lunch lady. And then we had a neighbor in my family. We had a neighbor, his name, we called him Opie, because he looked just like the character from the Andy Griffith Show. And Opie knew because my father, bless you, it's official, my father was a still worker, and so we were pretty regulated when we ate, right? Dinner on the table, baby. If he was working that 8 to 4 shift, we were eating spot on 4:30 every day. It was official. So Opie knew when we would eat dinner, and he kind of knew when Dad might have been working the 8 to 4 shift. And he would come down faithfully every day at 4:30. And he would come in, of course, my mother being my mother, oh, come on in. And he would come in and he would just kind of stand and linger around the table. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. He would just stand and kind of look like, Mrs. Snyder, did you make that roast beef? Mrs. Snyder, are those homemade rolls? He did it every day. So Mom would say, Wes was his actual name. She wouldn't call him Opie. We all called him Opie. You want to sit down and have dinner with us? Oh, that would be great. So Opie became part of our family dining experience. And we know how tables work. Today, you take me to any high school in this area, and I'll have a good sense of who's on what group. Yes? We all knew when we all sat together. The jocks were here, the cheerleaders were here, the bandies were here, whoever you want to call were here, the awkward kids were here. It doesn't change. Maybe the labels change, but we all go to whom we know and who we identify with. And my sister, as her health declined, and she went to a nursing home in Lower Borough. She was in assisted living. We need to get her to a nursing home. The care level, she needed to have more full-time care. So we took her briefly to a nursing home we found in Lower Borough. It was really small nursing home. We go there, and my sister, we're kind of getting her moved in, and she's kind of meeting some folks, as my sister would, very gregarious, in the hallway, and she said, I'll never forget, to one dear soul, she said, so what are you in for? It's like it was hysterical. So, what are you in for? As if we were like prison. Stick with that metaphor. So what are you in for? And she's like, oh, I'm in because I just got too old. Ooh, that has always stuck with me. I'm here because I just got too old. And then what they would do was a small place, small staff, they would have the residents eat in their rooms. That's what they wanted to do. And I'm thinking, I know this ain't gonna go over. So my sister, bless her heart, did that for lunch and dinner one day, and then said, I'm not staying in my room to eat. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't. I'm going out to the table. I'm like, go. So my sister was a game changer. She would go out to the central, the big, huge table they had in the room, and she went out there and said, no, I want to eat here. And then guess what happened? Every other resident came to the big table as well. We are made to sit at table together and be together. I love that she was a trendsetter and did that. I remember leading a retreat at Olmsted Manor. I've led many there. Olmsted Manor is one of the great United Methodist retreat centers. It's by the Allegheny National Forest. It's an old mansion. It is gorgeous. And I have led retreats there. And one of the things that Olmsted Manor is really known for is it's family style dining. So you go and they bring this food out and you pass it to a round table with each other, right? I mean, that was my entire upbringing. And I remember about 3 or 4 years ago leading a retreat, and we sit down at table and we're starting to pass the food around. And I remember seeing Kristen, I will never forget her name, stand up, and she's standing like right over my shoulder. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, I didn't say it out loud, but I'm like, what are you doing? She did not understand that we pass the food to each other. And she stood there and thought, I want some of those potatoes, I'm just gonna stand up and get them. And it was kind of like, no, you can sit down, we're gonna pass it to you. Had no idea that was how we ate at shared table. And I asked her afterwards, you know, are you comfortable? We're gonna pass the food, everyone's gonna get enough. I never had that experience before. I usually ate by myself on the couch watching TV. And Jesus knows that we are ones who need to gather together. The very act that we remember him by, that we are called to remember him by, that we do every week, is a celebration of being at table. And the story we read today is Jesus saying, everyone is invited to table. Everybody. And we disciples of Jesus, we gotta get this one right. We have to get this one right. Fred Craddock is a United Methodist professor and scholar, and he says this line, and I love it. If for whatever reason, not everyone is welcome to gather at table with you, then you do not have church. Oh. If for whatever the reason, not everyone is welcome to gather at table with you, then you do not have church. And I could say many stories of when we have failed to do this. I can remember serving a congregation, and it was gonna be homecoming, big homecoming meal, homecoming weekend, and people were coming back, and it was at the height of the AIDS crisis in this country. And everyone knew that Mary's son, Josh, had lived in New York City, that he was gay, and they were assuming that Josh then had to have AIDS. I'm like, I don't think so. So I swear they did this, and it was without my knowledge. I was never really part of the kitchen crew. I would show up and be like, okay, we're eating. They actually set out paper plates and plastic silverware for Josh and his family. That didn't last long. That was a teaching moment. If for whatever reason, not everyone can gather at table with you, then you do not have church. And I would serve congregations. Newcastle Wesley was the one, we lived on church dinners. That's how we kept the lights on. We would have church dinners literally twice a month, and they were good stuff. I mean, these women could cook, and these men could cook. So, I mean, that's how we kept the lights on. So I got to feeling, they could be very territorial and closed. I've talked about that congregation a lot. And one time I got the idea, you know what, for this big roast beef dinner, I want you all to invite a group of people, couple people that never come to these dinners because they're never invited by anyone to be here. Or people that you know in the community that really could deserve a good meal. I want you to invite these people to this dinner. That's what I want you to do. And you could tell there was grumbling like, oh, this woman. There was some grumbling. And then the best line ever was when someone said to me, all right, we're gonna do it. I've got some people in mind. I'm like, thank you, a little more joy would be good, thank you. And they said, and I swear this is so, can we do takeout? You're kind of missing the point. We're not gonna do takeout. You're gonna invite them and sit at table with them together in community. Church, we have to get this one right. We have to have that spirit of hospitality where every single person is welcome to be with us, to be at table, to have 8 Krispy Kreme donuts if they want. You are welcome to be here with us. In my mother's eulogy, the minister who was co-presiding had said in his eulogy, you know, the one thing about Dorothy Snyder that always amazed me the first time I met her in her home was how big was that dining room table. It was huge. And it sat right the centerpiece of the house. My mother's father built that table, and it was big and wooden and serious. We ate, darn it. This is where we gathered. But the thing I loved about it was we didn't have chairs around the table. We had benches. Benches, like 3, 4, 5, 6 benches around this big table. Why a bench? You can fit a lot more people on a bench than you can around chairs. And my mother's line would, it didn't matter what time we were eating, who came by, Opie or the next 87 people in the neighborhood that would happen to stop by, or all the family that would come by. You'd knock on the door and it was dinner time, Mom would say to all of us sitting there, scooch over, make room, scooch over, come on, have a seat, you can fit in. So we'd all be eating like, this is great, Mom. You'd eat like, this is good, Mom, thanks. But that was the motto of my mother. Scooch over. You can fit in. Oh, what a motto for the faith community. Scooch over. Make room. Make room so all can fit in. Friends, in this divided world in which we live, wouldn't it be wonderful if instead of building bigger walls, we built longer tables? Instead of building bigger walls, we built longer tables. And we said to each and every person, come on in. We've got a space for you. We'll make room. We will scooch over so you can fit in and share in table with us. That's the spirit of the gospel. That's the spirit I know here at Hot Meadow. That's the labor we continue into Hazelwood and into the broader community. Come on in. We'll scooch over. We'll make sure you have a place. We'll make sure that you can fit and eat at table with us. Friends, may we live to make it so. And all God's beloved and beautiful children said, amen.